In this lesson, we'll begin the process of refining our forest creature concept by examining our overall values and textures. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have all of the textures that we want to use incorporated into our forest creature concept here. So what we'd like to do now is really just start the process of making just overall refinements to our entire piece here. So you'll notice now that I've made a new group which sits outside of our texture blocking group, okay? So what I'd like to do is just make a merged copy of all of this information that makes up our forest creature. Now I don't want to include any information that I don't want in this merged copy, namely the background. So I'm going to go ahead over here in our layers panel and I'm just going to click here and turn off the visibility of the background for the time being. And now I'm going to come to my keyboard and hold down Shift, Control, Alt, E. And this basically creates a merged copy of everything that makes up our forest creature. I'm going to drag this layer into our new group, which I've called Overall Refine. Let's go ahead and collapse our texture blocking group. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn on our background, and let's go ahead and turn off the visibility of that texture blocking group. Let's go ahead and just call this layer Merged Copy. Okay, so we have our merged copy, as you can see there. And now what I'd like to do is just make a duplicate layer of this merged copy. Okay, and I'm just going to title this layer Refine. Okay, excellent. So what I want to do now is just kind of examine this entire piece. Again, just to reiterate, the reason we blocked in all of these textures in grayscale is so I could just really focus on the overall values, my lights and my darks. Now I want to say just once again, this isn't the be-all end-all way to incorporate textures into a character concept, but it's just one approach that can really maybe give you a better advantage, especially once you start incorporating color. So just kind of separating two chains of thought there with grayscale and color being separate. So I've made this duplicate layer and I've titled it Refine, and now what I'd like to do is maybe grab either my dodge or my burn tool, which is just right here. You can hold down and select either one of them. We're going to go ahead and start with the burn tool, okay? And I just want to go ahead and kind of focus on strengthening up just some shadows, kind of really pushing the overall dramatic lighting that I already kind of have here. So I want to kind of come around and let's start just with the snout area here and just kind of really refining our shadows overall. I'm going to go ahead and size my brush down, and I'm just going to use a hard round brush, and I'm going to enable transfer. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of come around and hit some of these areas where I think the shadows could be stronger. I may also kind of push some cracks even a little bit further. And along the way as I do this, I'm just going to kind of zoom out and just kind of see how things are looking. So as I do this, I'm thinking about, where my lighting is coming from, where it's originating from, kind of up in this upper area. And so right now I have my burn tool set to shadows. If we come up here to our control panel, we can basically change it from either shadows to midtones or highlights, and using our burn tool basically darken those values. So right now I'm just focusing on kind of the darker areas, just a lot of little shadows, just kind of overall. And so this is a great little tool. You can kind of really push the contrast pretty far. Now the reason I made a duplicate of this merged copy is in case I completely mess up, I can erase away areas which will reveal the information underneath, okay? And so again, making that merged copy to start with kind of allows me just to kind of focus on everything as a whole. I'm already pretty comfortable and pretty happy with all of the textures as far as just where I've placed them and how I've kind of started to weave them in. Now if I ever needed to completely go back and rethink the textures I've used, I still have all that information saved in our texture blocking group. So I'm kind of pushing some of these little cracks that I see here and there. So really this is a process where you just want to kind of work your way around and examine just different elements that you think could be pushed a little bit further. I'm kind of pushing some of these little cracks in this wood right here for that little stump horn just a little bit further. Just by using the burn tool. We could even come over here to this horn on the left side of his head and just kind of push some of those cracks, some of those crevices even further just by darkening them using this burn tool. Now another thing we can do is we can use our clone stamp tool and we can kind of refine certain shapes if we want. All right. So just using our clone stamp tool, I'm going to use a hard round brush this time. Just sizing that down. I want to kind of refine this overall shape just a little bit more. We can kind of start to further refine some textures as far as how they're weaved in. So just kind of working our way around overall. There'll be some areas now that I may want to go ahead and erase, just kind of cleaning up some edges. Just some areas that may have gotten just a little bit messy. So kind of focusing on some of these areas right here. Just any kind of little bitty messy spots that I feel like we could do without. Very cool. I kind of see another area over here that I may want to kind of adjust just a little bit. So again, it's just kind of a refinement process. Kind of examining overall anything that we want to kind of retouch, refine, clean up, just re-examine. And I like basically working on everything already merged together just kind of as a whole. That way I don't really have to jump between a lot of layers. Again, I'm pretty happy with just the overall placement of my different textures that I've brought in. I may want to kind of focus down here on the lower lip. Again, kind of just adjusting, kind of pushing some of these little crevices, some of these little cracks even further, just using that burn tool. Let's go ahead and try switching to our dodge tool now. And I'm just going to set it to highlights up here in our control panel. And I may want to hit some of these areas where I think we could have a stronger highlight, kind of right over there. And I'm just kind of using it sparingly. And so we can kind of see that wet kind of mossy bark that we brought in when we were bringing in our bark patches, just kind of hitting some of those, kind of bringing some of that wetness out by increasing just a little bit of the contrast using this tool here. So again, you can just come over here and either grab your dodge tool or your burn tool just by holding down. I may want to go ahead and switch to midtones and just kind of focus on some of those, kind of pulling those out a little bit just over here on his right horn, just kind of hitting that. Might want to focus a little bit on his cheek area too, kind of bringing that out a little bit. And even on this kind of bubbly area of skin right here. So again, we can kind of start to make some comparisons if we want, just between this layer and the previous one. We just kind of start to see how we're starting to adjust just different areas using just some simple tools, dodge and burn. And so this could be a little bit of a time-consuming process, just kind of going through, picking apart areas that you think you may want to kind of increase, like the shadow here and there. Or if you want to adjust the overall shape of, say, a texture that's been used, you know, you can come over here and grab your clone stamp tool and kind of start to refine an overall shape if you're not completely happy with it. So just take your time. You know, you may just see some things that you want to push a little bit further. You may want to tweak a little bit more. Just kind of coming around, kind of adjusting this little form right here. We may want to kind of increase some of these little cracks and crevices. Just kind of hitting those with a burn tool. And try not to get stuck in any one place for a long time, just continually working on just one spot. You know, try to move pretty fluidly around the entire piece as you go. That way you don't really end up boxing yourself into a corner. And definitely kind of, if you're zooming in a lot, you know, zoom out periodically. You can actually overwork an area and waste a lot of time. You can end up zooming out and realize that you really went too far with it. Just kind of bumping up some of the shadows of some of these little leaves that we kind of used for our thicker moss earlier. Might switch from shadows to midtones now. Kind of hit some of that moss, kind of set it into shadow in certain areas just a little bit more. Kind of looking over here, I may want to kind of adjust some of these little crevices that we have. Just some little kind of cracks and crevices, little shadowed areas. And just zooming out again, we kind of see little differences that we're making along the way. Okay, so we're going to kind of keep, in between lessons, we'll keep kind of focusing on just adjusting our lights and our darks kind of on the overall concept here of our forest creature. In the next lesson, we'll go ahead and shift gears, continuing to really refine the overall piece by kind of weaving in some of this moss in a little bit better, kind of going in, doing a little bit of painting now to kind of weave that moss in by just kind of manually painting some more refined individual little hairs and strands of moss. We'll also focus on the mouth here as well, kind of starting to work in maybe a little bit of drool. You know, we've got this really wide mouth that's open. We may want to kind of really push that focal point that we have there and add some just dripping saliva. So stick around and we'll continue to refine our grayscale forest creature in the next lesson.